Oh no, that was a fluke. Any moment now, they're gonna figure out that you're crap at singing. So it's estimated that 70% of people will experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. And if this is you, you're in good company. Countless well-known artists have quoted their experiences of imposter syndrome, including Maya Angelou, John Steinbeck, Meryl Streep, Jodie Foster, Lady Gaga, Natalie Portman, Tina Fey. In this video, we're going to talk about what imposter syndrome is, its pattern, and how to interrupt this pattern so you can get over your imposter syndrome for good. Hello lovely ones, this is Livia. I'm a professional operatic soprano, voice teacher, and the founder of Singing for Self-Care. If you like heart-based singing and health, I highly suggest you subscribe because I'm here for you every Monday with tips on your most powerful method of self-care, your voice. Because remember, you and your voice are practically magic. Grab a cup of tea, put me on 1.5 or double speed, and let's go. So what is imposter syndrome? So the term imposter syndrome was first coined by Dr. Pauline Clance in 1985, where she observed this phenomenon of people experiencing distress and maladaptive behavior stemming from the belief that they are intellectual frauds and their achievements are undeserved, despite objective evidence of success. So what might the pattern of imposter syndrome look like? Think of a time when you've been given a project or an opportunity. Maybe you've been asked to feature your vocals on someone's track, or you're auditioning for a music program, or perhaps you've landed a job in a production, a really cool role you've always wanted. What then? You might experience feelings of intense fear, anxiety, self-doubt, worry. And from here, you may feel so overwhelmed and paralyzed by these feelings that you self-sabotage the situation and procrastinate with your preparation. So by the way, if you find yourself procrastinating with your music practice or your preparation or just your workflow when it comes to singing in some way, and you'd like me to address that in a future video, let me know in the comments. Okay, so on the flip side of procrastination, perhaps you are so freaked out about this new opportunity that you go above and beyond with your preparation. So you expend a lot of effort, like a disproportionate amount. So you actually become over prepared for the opportunity, and perhaps there could have been a healthier and more efficient way of redistributing your time and energy. So I was actually reminded when I was writing this section of one of my favorite ever TED Talks, which is by the music journalist Nardwuar, the human Soviet. Nardwuar. If you don't know Nardwuar, it's very much worth watching his TED Talk. He literally crowd surfs out of his TED Talk at the end. And then you can go down the YouTube rabbit hole of suggested videos, which are mainly compilations of famous people being completely blown away by his questions. So Nardwuar is famous for his bizarre interviews in which he mentioned super specific, like just really obscure things to the artist he's interviewing, just things that no one could seemingly ever possibly know. So this is his trademark. And in his TED Talk, Nardwuar reveals that this stemmed from his first ever interview with Snoop Dogg. So at that point, he didn't really know much about rap music, and the fear that he was experiencing around the interview, he used that as fuel to learn and prepare as much as possible. The interview, it was a massive success. He and Snoop Dogg are now friends, and fast forward a few years later, and Nardwuar is celebrated for his seemingly superhuman encyclopedic knowledge of the hip-hop scene. So the thing is, anxiety isn't inherently a bad thing. So I talk about this deeper in my course by Hacking Your Brain with Singing, but basically anxiety is it's evolutionary and it has this amazing effect on your system. So when it matches the perceived risk, it gives you this incredible power to achieve what you need to achieve. Anxiety is evolutionarily our greatest motivator. And it only becomes a problem when our anxiety or this firing of the sympathetic nervous system outweighs the risk or trigger at hand. So if you feel like nervous or slightly anxious about the new opportunity that you found yourself in, it's actually a wonderful thing, because it means that you care and it means that you're motivated to do some of your best work. So you can harness this feeling and take action. However, if you do feel like your anxiety is disproportionate to the level of risk, definitely consider talking to your healthcare professional and implementing a mental health care plan. Stay safe and seek medical advice. So let's continue on with the pattern of imposter syndrome. So you received a cool opportunity, you're freaking out about it, you either freeze and procrastinate, or you start over preparing and working like crazy. So what now? You go ahead and you do the thing. So you record the song, you do your audition, you start rehearsing for your production, or perhaps, you've done your opening night. So it's finished, it's done. And then you may receive positive feedback on your efforts. So people think that damn, this track is a banger, or you got a letter getting admitted into the music program, the director was impressed with your work, or you got a really good review in the newspaper. So this is the part where the imposter part becomes really active. You may argue that this is the most important part of the cycle to examine. So this is the part where you don't internalize and acknowledge your success. And as a result, you feel fraudulent and you experience a lot of self-doubt. So you may put your success down to a fluke, that was just pure dumb luck, or, perhaps there was some mistake. So actually, for both my bachelor and my master of music degrees, I always felt that there was some sort of admissions error and I wasn't actually ever supposed to get in. And sometimes I still have the occasional dream where one of the universities calls me up years later and says that I need to give back my degree. Or maybe, and I think this is one of kind of the meanest thoughts we may get of the lot, is that when people give you positive feedback, that they're all lying. Maybe they're just giving you work or saying nice things because they feel sorry for you. So does any of this sound familiar? If so, share your greatest hits of imposter syndrome, those really nasty little thoughts of fraudulence that seem to pop up for you the most often. Let me know in the comments below. So let's look at this part of the cycle where we don't internalize our success. So let's figure out why we might do this and how we can move past it and break this imposter syndrome cycle. So the first thing is to observe that there is a disconnect between objective success and feelings of adequacy. When you have feelings like, it's only a matter of time before someone figures out I don't know what I'm doing and that I'm not good enough. Where do these thoughts come from? There's this feeling that you don't belong in the situation that you are in. So why is it that you don't feel like you belong there? Perhaps you came to music a little later in life and don't have as much experience, or maybe you've, more recently moved into another genre and you feel a little bit out of your depth. Or perhaps you've actually been told externally that you don't belong. So keep in mind that people in the arts, and definitely in music, are in a field that's not often fully appreciated by society. So your family might not have approved of you investing time in music, or maybe you've been asked to work for exposure dollars, not money. Or maybe you've been asked every musician's most hated question, but what's your real job? So as a musician, it's likely that your work has been devalued your whole life. So of course, it makes perfect sense that when something good happens to you and that you're recognized for your art, that the first thought in your brain is, this is too good to be true. And the narrative that is being created over time is that music is not something that is important or valuable. So therefore, your achievements and your talents, they're not valuable either. And this can be augmented by the fact that also internally, the arts world can be a very volatile place. So obviously art is subjective and everyone's going to have an opinion. Not everyone is going to like what you do. That's the reality, and that's totally okay. When we have respectful collaboration and we all strive to create the best art we can, it's amazing, and that's how we move forward. So obviously constructive criticism is super important. But unfortunately, Musicians also have to deal with a lot of criticism that doesn't come from a positive place. So I can only speak from my own experience in the classical world because that's where I come from, but you know, one look at the YouTube comment section in a video of like any famous opera singer singing any famous aria, and you will see in action the toxicity that musicians are faced with from people who are, I mean, supposed fans of the art form. You know, there could be this like otherworldly performance from one of the greatest singers in history, but someone who, let's be honest, they're not usually a performer themselves, will be sitting there with a notebook and writing like,
well, that was absolute rubbish. On page 3, bar 57, the last quaver of that bar, the last quaver there was really, really wobbly. And then 2 pages later, on page 5, on bar 213, there was an R that sounded a little bit like an R vowel. And you know, this is just absolute, it's just an atrocity. A complete nightmare.
And unfortunately, this attitude is often extended to young and developing singers too. So a lot of people are of the belief that there is absolutely no good modern singers. I mean, it's actually kind of funny. Like, the golden age of singing has ended, and everyone who is musically active after the 1970s is like automatically terrible. I know I'm kind of, if you're watching this video, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but you know, if you really do love the art form of singing, you need to do your part to support and elevate the future of that platform by nurturing the artist. It's absolutely necessary to learn how to disassociate yourself from these negative attitudes. I mean, it sucks and it's not fair that you need to do this, but you know, it's a tale as old as time. Some people are going to be threatened by you being amazing. And for every armchair expert out there, there's going to be at least 10 people who are going to be absolutely touched by your art and talent. So remember, you have the ability to impact people's emotions in a very special, profound, and life-changing way through your singing. And that is something sacred. Let them be unhappy. You know, their critique, it's no reflection on you. They're where they need to be right now, and they will learn lessons in their own time. Anyway, I think I've gone on a little bit of a tangent. So if you want to see a video about dealing with criticism or haters, let me know. So back to societal messages directly telling you that you don't deserve to be successful. So we've covered the fact that music isn't particularly valued in many parts of the Western world, and we've spoken about that the industry itself can be quite critical. Now, it's also important to point out that there are underrepresented and marginalized groups who deal with systems of prejudice on a daily basis. So Michelle Obama gives a really excellent answer in an interview about this, which I will leave a link in the description. So she points out that when you don't have certain privileges, so say your sex, your race, your religion, your socioeconomic background, all of these things, that you're actually always being told by a society that you don't belong in the place that you aspire to be. And that can make you feel like you're an imposter in your own life. But really, true strength comes from a diversity of experience, and you have every right to be represented. So I won't go into everything she says because I encourage you to watch it for yourself. It's only, 6 or so minutes long, but it's very astute and inspiring. So you can go check that out after you finish this video. So you can see these feelings of, oh, there's been a mistake, I don't deserve this, or they're gonna find out that I'm not good enough. You can absolutely see where all of this comes from. There's this subtle underlying narrative that you pursuing singing is 1, worthless, 2, you're not good enough for, and perhaps 3, that it's something that you actually have no right to pursue. Yet you're doing it anyway because you are a badass. Good. So don't bash yourself up by feeling this way. So the problem, it's not with you. Okay, so with all of this out of the way, let's look at ways that we can actively dismantle imposter syndrome. So we understand that imposter syndrome is made up of 2 things. It's the mismatch between how you perceive your talent, or lack thereof, and your objective success. So let's examine these 2 things separately. First up, feelings of inadequacy or your perceived lack of talent. So everyone has fears about certain things. This is just part of the human condition. But where imposter syndrome is different is that you may take one specific fear and magnify it so it becomes an entire reason why you can't pursue what you want to pursue. So perhaps if you feel like sometimes you have intonation issues, so some notes are sometimes a little bit out of tune, that because of this you are completely marred as a singer and an artist. So if anything good comes your way, that there's been some sort of mistake. There's no any way anyone could see any value in my work because, you know, sometimes I sing out of tune. When the reality is that you offer something completely unique and special as a singer. You just have so many beautiful things to offer and you can easily work on your technical issues that come up. Still an artist with an immense amount of value. So what we can do here is start to examine the limiting beliefs that we're holding onto, which are in turn holding us back. So ironically, I totally experienced imposter syndrome when I was writing this video. So I was thinking to myself, like, Olivia, you don't have your own shit 100% together. Why would anyone listen to you? And sure, I'm sure if I look at my YouTube diagnostics of this micro channel, then sure, maybe not that many people will listen. But you know, this isn't about me. So what if someone were to find this video and it helped them? So isn't that the important thing? So my insecurities about my perceived progress have nothing to do with the outcome or my objective. So anyway, that was my most recent limiting belief. Now let's look at yours. So sharing is caring, right? So the next time you're experiencing imposter syndrome, I want you to ask yourself the following questions. So our aim here is to get as specific about our emotions and thoughts as possible, because then we can get really specific about the solution. Ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling now? What am I afraid of and why? What's the real issue? And what does this make me believe about myself? So if I were to answer about my own feelings when I was writing this video, this is what I would probably say. So I'm feeling cringy and dishonest in making it seem like I have my shit together. I'm afraid of showing that I'm imperfect, and as a result that I will be judged and not accepted by others. The real issue is that I think I must be perfect in order to be deserving of love, and in turn this makes me feel that I am not lovable. So now let's look at the same set of questions with a music specific example. So a very common one that many musicians seem to experience. So you've been accepted into a music program and you think, it must have been a mistake because everyone there is way more talented than you are. So I am feeling absolute dread. I'm afraid that people will notice that I haven't figured out my top notes yet. The real issue is that I equate technical progress with my inherent value. And therefore, this makes me believe that I am worthless. It's well worth going through this step of asking yourself these questions because it really does help target the root of the problem. So, you know, oftentimes we have this big kind of wash of surface emotion and it can disguise some really important information. So with the examples we just used, the surface emotion of feeling like cringy, I would have no idea how to go about changing that. But if it's broken down to its root and the feeling is actually being unlovable, then I can go about changing that. No, and it's exactly the same for the other example. How do you change a feeling of dread? So that's a bit abstract, right? When you get to the bottom of it and you realize that you're actually experiencing a feeling of being worthless, then it's clearer how you can move into a direction of positive change. Now, I just want to add this in here, but everyone has their inner workings. So remember that a whopping 70% of people experience imposter syndrome. So that's almost 3/4 of everyone you know. So many people, they're experiencing this right now and they say nothing because they have the same fears that you have. So we censor our speech around other people, but we can't censor our own thoughts. You know, it's like that famous saying that you see everyone else's show reel and you only see your own blooper reel. And you know, as a result of this, we think that everyone's going to notice our shortcomings when in reality, everyone is just fixated on their own. Okay, so now we've sifted to the bottom of our feelings of inadequacy or lack of talent. So let's look at the other part of the equation, this objective evidence of success. So this is the cool things that you've achieved. So So there's a few ways that you can go about this, and you may like to try one or all of them. So firstly, we need to create a record of success. And a great place to do this is in your professional CV or biography. So a CV can be a really great place to start because you're recording all of the cool things that you've done with your music in this nice and concise way. So as you think about things that you would want an employer to know, you may find a few memories of achievements coming out of the woodwork. And after you've completed this, then you can then move on to your biography. So anywhere around, say, like 200 words maybe is good. So you're going to write this in the third person, so using your own name. So when you do this and you don't write about yourself in the first person, so you're not using I, there is going to be this like slight dissociation between how you feel and your accomplishments. So it may be a little bit easier. But I'll be honest, writing your bio can definitely be tough at first, and it's very likely that you're going to want to play down your achievements, which is why it can be actually really good to ask someone for help here. So you can enlist the assistance of someone close to you and see what they would write about you. Now, I absolutely love writing bios for my students because it has the capacity to be a really empowering exercise. Now, I can't tell you the amount of times I've written something and my student has said like, "Oh my God, you make me sound amazing." And I have to tell them like, it's because you are amazing. So consider for a moment how people who love you, so your friends, your family, your pets, how they perceive you and not so much how you perceive yourself. Every now and again, if you're doubting yourself, have a read of your bio and reflect on objectively what you have achieved. So the next point was actually really instrumental in helping me get over my own imposter syndrome when it comes to singing. So way back when, in my bachelor degree, I always felt really behind. I felt like I didn't know enough about opera in general. So things like the repertoire, singing in a foreign language, like acting, pretty much all of it. So I inadvertently did that thing where I harnessed my anxiety for good and I studied my butt off. So I read books and I watched DVDs of opera every single week. I just became this sponge for everything opera, and I took every single education opportunity that I could possibly get my hands on. So after a while, a little bit like Nardwuar, I started to amass a bit of knowledge and background. And upon analyzing scores and recordings of the great artists, I started to understand the music that I was attempting to sing. Now this did two things. One, it contributed to my objective record of success. So I could look back and objectively say, okay, look, you've spent 10 years studying this and this and this. So objectively, you know some stuff. So I can remind myself of all the ways I ever worked on that insecurity in a concrete way. Now, the second thing that this did, and I think this was really key for me, and I would argue it's, the most important thing for any artist, is that you develop a point of view. So when you have a deep and working knowledge of your chosen music, you can trust yourself more and more, and you can develop more freedom in your expression. You know what the conventions are, and you have the ability to create your own opinion about them. So you become less worried about your interpretation being accepted or what people might think, because you're making an informed artistic choice. And then you're able to find this kind of flow state of creativity. So remember, art is individual. So much like Michelle Obama was saying about strength coming from diversity of experience, it's the same with art. Art is for everyone. Everyone has a unique story to be expressed, and your perspective is valuable and it's completely unmatched. So I'm in a position now that if I have a differing interpretation to, say, a conductor or a coach, I'm able to have a discussion about it and justify my artistic choice. And I know this because I've done it. Diva. And because I know objectively that my artistic choice doesn't come from a place of ignorance, but rather it comes from many years of study and research and experience, I now trust my inner and my outer voice. Now I can trust that my point of view and creativity is valuable, and so is yours. The thing is, when we're on this learning journey where we're working on our voice, our musicianship, our stagecraft, all of these things that we work on as singers, that once we have attained these certain pieces of knowledge, they're no longer interesting to us anymore. Whatever we needed to learn, it's learned, it's in our brain, it's in our body, and it's no longer a big deal. So we pick up information over the course of years, and then it starts to feel like very unremarkable general knowledge. So when the time comes and you smash a performance and you get wonderful feedback, you might be left feeling like, what? It wasn't that good. Like, they're probably just saying that to be nice. So for example, imagine that you're in the company of a gymnast and you watch them do this insanely difficult maneuver, like flippy, flippy, flippy. And then they start heavily critiquing this very small part of the routine. And you're just watching in absolute disbelief as this person who's just performed something like incredible in front of your eyes is like berating themselves for this like tiny imperfection. Like, you can't even comprehend how you would go about like doing that move, let alone even notice this like tiny mistake, and then much less criticize that mistake. So guess what? You're the same. You're a vocal athlete. This stuff that you do is amazing, and it may seem unremarkable to you because you do it all the time. But to someone else who hasn't invested the same amount of time and effort that you have into your craft, this is like pure magic to them. So keep in mind that no one is born knowing how to do backflips, and much the same, no one is just born knowing how to sing perfect high notes. So remember your journey and your objective record of success. So lastly, I want to take a little look at the silver lining of imposter syndrome. As I mentioned in my jealousy video, which I will link up here, when we experience a negative emotion, so whether it be jealousy or in this case, like anxiety or self-loathing, self-doubt, or however you personally feel when you experience imposter syndrome, this is a valuable clue. If your emotion doesn't fit the situation, so instead of celebrating a really cool achievement you've just made, instead you're feeling this like sick sense of dread, then this is a sign that you should listen to. This feeling that you're experiencing is shining this like big old spotlight on where you can work on yourself and heal. So you're not stuck here in imposter syndrome forever. You can change your life. Another silver lining, those who often suffer from imposter syndrome are high achievers. Why? How do you know that you're in this category? Because chances are, if you're afraid of being like found out or like not understanding how someone could possibly like or enjoy your work, it's likely that you really care about your work. So this is something that's very special to you and you treasure it. No, it's likely that you do use your anxiety as a motivator and that you're committed to creating high quality work that you really put your heart and soul into. So just a little coda to this video, which kind of strips a whole other layer of the imposter syndrome onion, is to consider ego. And by ego, I just mean how we perceive ourselves. So in your deep thoughts, consider, what is all of this for? Why do you do these things and why do they matter? And what is success? And does a successful life equal a happy life? Why? Why not? Who are you if you're not your voice, your work, or your achievements? So anyway, on that esoteric note, I hope there was some stuff in this video that you found helpful. So keeping in mind that 70% of people you know struggle with this too, consider sharing this video with your friends. Wherever you are in the world, I love you and I wish you a beautiful week, and I will see you next Monday. Bye!